Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Keith Giffen Day, so we're taking a look at Ambush Bug issue number 1, cover dated June 1985. We're backtracking a little bit. I've already reviewed issues 2, 3, and 4 just very recently, and was able to come across this issue through an order on my comic shop, so I figured we'd backtrack a bit and still take a look at issue 1 before we move on to something else. Another fun issue from Ambush Bug. Obviously it's the first one. What I was surprised with going through and reading this one is how well fleshed out I think the concept of Ambush Bug was, the kind of layouts, different layouts that Keith Giffen was using, the stuff that he was using consistently, and then, you know, the layouts that were lending themselves to comic strip art and different artistic interpretations all throughout the series. He already kind of had that worked out in issue 1, so I'll mention those things and point them out as we go through the issue. So I'm probably going to say a lot of the same stuff I said for issues 2, 3, and 4. Again, really surprised how consistent the series is, again, starting from number 1 all the way through issue 4. So starting with the cover real quick, obviously this is a play on a very classic Superman cover. Believe it's Superman issue number 1, pretty sure. Not Action Comics number 1, which is the first appearance of Superman. Is it number 1? I forget. I think it is. Doesn't matter. Definitely a play on that. He's got that same kind of framing that's used on that cover. The decorative elements down here, you know, the Art Deco kind of late 30s, early 40s feel is there. Just a weird little drawing detail that I was a little surprised. A bit of a tangent here where the fingers don't quite overlap the frame as they do on this side. So, you know, just a little nitpicky comment there. Other than that, pretty fun cover and gives you a good idea of what you can expect with the series within these pages, right? So let's have a look inside. Starts off with a bit of a play on the ships in Star Trek. So this is the USS Entertainment. Great cosmic shot here. I mean, Giffen, you know, channeling in a different aesthetic all of his Kirby knowledge, right? He's gone past the Kirby stuff, but I will mention there's still little things here and there that harken back to that. Definitely his compositions, right? I think a lot of his compositions are strong because of that huge Kirby influence. Oh, this is around the time when the Hunger Dogs was coming out of DC. Funny that they weren't even able to splurge for a color ad for what they claim to be Jack Kirby's crowning achievement. Whether or not it is, I don't know. A lot of people don't like it. It's been re-edited and moved around when it was originally published. You can get kind of the original version. I'm not exactly sure where. I know the Omnibus publishes it, but still mixes stuff up and put it in a different sequential order than it was meant to be originally. I mean, even the published version did that, so I'm not quite sure what order you're supposed to read it in. I remember Tom Scioli doing something on his channel about this, so maybe you can find that information from him. But there you go. Definitely, you know, the influence of the master being apparent in this shot here. Another thing I was impressed with this series is just the sheer number of panels per page, but all the while the storytelling, the reading direction does not get confused, and it's really simple and easy to read visually and understand what's going on. His crops are amazing, having to work with such small panels. This aspect of it almost reminds me more here, not of Kirby, but of like Steve Ditko, right? And the kind of stuff Ditko would do with those small panels. Really adept at just giving you the gist of what you need and cropping out the rest. So evocative panels, right? With just a little bit of building that you have to draw. You know, great teacher, Keith Giffen, to show you kind of some visual shorthand you can use to get through some panels real quick and still convey the information you need to, but crop out all the stuff that takes a while to draw, right? You know, drawing a whole lamppost, a little more complicated. Just drawing part of it here with a few signs on, pretty simple. So we're finally, now I kind of understand why this character here kept appearing a little bit throughout the series. So he was introduced here, Cheeks, the Toy Wonder. Not sure how funny that is, but yeah, just some element that he added to the series to infuse some humor, I guess. And the reason he goes out in the Superman costume is a little bit lost to me, to be honest. Not quite sure why he's doing that. But these great crops is, again, when I go through here, that's what hits me the most is how adept he is at the layouts and the crops. The crops of Ambush Bug's face here in this panel here, I think is amazing. Again, from a drawing standpoint, so little to do to get your point across. Probably draw this panel fairly quickly. A bit of a weird year 1 kind of feel to it too, almost in its simplicity, right? And when I say year 1, I mean Batman year 1, a little bit of David Mazzucchelli, who was definitely influenced a lot by, I'm going to mention him again, the artist of Alex Sinner, the European or Argentinian comic book. I guess South American, we'll go with that, just because I'm not sure if he's Argentinian or some other nationality, but I think he's Argentinian. Munoz, right? And the Alex Sinner series. You can see the influence all over these 2 pages, right? Once you take out the more fantastic elements of Ambush Bug and his cartoony little friend Cheeks, you really get a sense that, you know, he's really riffing on that Munoz style. Go look at that series and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I mentioned it before, right? Just odd faces for the shapes, a lot of caricature, a lot of kind of ugly looking characters too, lots of deep dark shadows. And again, I do I think I mentioned it, but Mazzucchelli, I'll say it again, is definitely influenced by that same artist as well, at least in the simplicity of the shapes and the contrast, black and white, that Munoz does in that series. This is another one that Keith Giffen's going to keep using, and now I have to wonder, this, you know, brow down kind of shadow. Sometimes you see the nose, sometimes you don't. If this is something he might have ripped off or borrowed from Munoz from that series, I'm not quite sure. Or if he came up with that himself. But yeah, it's like when you see like just the regular characters, background characters, they just don't really resemble anything you've seen Keith Giffen draw before, right? I thought there was actually kind of a gag here that to me kind of, you know, represents politics today, even though this comic is in 1985, but obviously political commentary can apply, you know, all throughout different generations. I think, you know, the whole, it's always a us against them kind of vibe in politics, right? Left versus right. It's already kind of divided that way, right? Like sports teams and stuff. But I like this little conversation between this character and Ambush Bug, right? So he says, "You're a detective, aren't you? Worse for you, Specs. I'm a registered Democrat." "No, don't hurt me. I was deprived by society." So if you understand a little bit about the left and Democrats, you understand why this is what he's kind of using as an argument here. And then Ambush Bug to say, "That doesn't cut any ice with me, pal. I'm a Southern Democrat, not a boll weevil." And then the characters to say, this character here is to say, "It's a Democrat who acts like a Republican. Run." This whole exchange just, you know, made me laugh. Some pretty cool looking action too, all the way throughout. Some, you know, kind of what I would deem somewhat ugly drawing in a way, but that works for the dynamics, you know, kind of like what Frank Miller did on Dark Knight Returns, right? When I first saw, before reading Dark Knight Returns, just shots of it in Wizard and stuff when I was, you know, 12, 13 years old and kind of a newbie in comic books and stuff, I thought that drawing, I didn't know it was from Dark Knight Returns. I didn't know it was Frank Miller. I thought some of those shots looked really bad and horrible. I thought it was bad drawing, right? But when it's with intent and there's a reason for it, it really works. And I feel like that's one of those panels here. Kind of an interesting, squared off, thicker interpretation of dynamism lines or action lines, whatever you want to call those. One of the rare bits where he breaks the panel too. He'll do it later on in the series, but I don't see it much in issue 1. This kind of lighting too, like, you know, Alexander Munoz, again, I've talked about its influence on Keith Giffen, on David Mazzucchelli. Gonna have to assume it's had a huge influence on Frank Miller too, right? And when he did that, started doing that Sin City style, you know, from even the great genius Frank Miller, you know, whatever you think of him, I love his stuff, but, you know, recent stuff or more modern stuff, maybe not so much. But he's got his classics and he's established in the industry, right? Even his new art, some of it I kind of like. It's like hit or miss with me. I think I've mentioned that before. But even the great Frank Miller, you know, has influences and kind of wears them on his sleeve sometimes. Like I said, with Munoz's kind of style on early Sin City. And then one of my favorite books from Frank Miller, Ronin, actually he's channeling there a little bit of Lone Wolf and Cub. I forget the artist on that series name. Give me a second. I've got it in my library here, so I don't. Kazuo Koike and Goseki Kojima. That's the artist. Goseki Kojima, the artist on Lone Wolf and Cub. So he definitely, Miller took a lot of inspiration from him. Just going to point it out, back in the day when you could still have characters smoking comics, right? Again, this is a good deadline choice and a good kind of, you know, halting, stopping moment in the plot. That, you know, even though there's no actual, you know, illustration in the splash page here, it's just one big sound effect. It actually has you stop a little bit in your tracks and take a look at it. So in that way, in the reading sense of things, it's pretty ingenious. And in the artistic sense of things, this was a quick page for Giffen to get through. And then again, here's where I realized, you know, he established these kind of one-page gag splashes, I guess you could call them here, early on in the first issue of Ambush Bug. Not quite sure what this is about. Odd-looking fellow. This one here, obviously parodying and making fun of, you know, the fitness craze of the early 80s and all the aerobics videos that were out there. So I guess figured Ambush Bug should have one as well. You got a data sheet, kind of what later on in the late 80s, early 90s would be the type of information you'd find on the back of a trading card, right? I'm not quite sure trading cards had hit it big yet. I think they were still just sports cards in 1984, 1985. This would be a play on late night horror movies, I guess, of the early 80s that you could watch on TV. That's what it feels like. But he's even making fun of David Letterman in there. And I guess it's just an all-around parody of everything. The titles of horror movies, or I think in this case, these are the titles of Stephen King books, right? Firestarter is Firestarter. The Stand just stays The Stand. That's an odd one. Oh, these characters here. I remember seeing them on the racks as a kid. Proportionately, they looked a little bit more like these three down here. These two look a little bit different, as does the Warlord up here. But these were all, or looked very much like He-Man ripoffs back in the day. But, you know, now I'd actually probably enjoy having these characters and putting them up next to my He-Man figures. So here he is once again, changing his art style to mimic the somewhat, 1950s kind of comic strip humor cartoon style. And then back to the Alex Sinner style, all secondary characters once again. So going through these panels here, literally looks like another comic called Alex Sinner. Except when Ambush Bug is thrown in there, of course. Yeah, so Alex Sinner, like I said, those background characters, he's always throwing in, people looking imperfect, right? So this lady here, she's got like lots of freckles, so he really highlights them. People with acne scars and stuff like that, he would really make obvious. The main character himself has acne scars and makes them pretty apparent in Alex Sinner. So it's that kind of detail, right? It's like cartoony realism, I guess is what you'd call it. And here's where the gag started. In the first issue, Darkseid, at the end of the issue, I talked about how basically, I think by issue 3, I was saying, if this is something that's consistent, that he did in issue 1 as well, this might just be a swerve or, a trolling situation where he has Darkseid appear at the end of each issue. And of course, the reader expecting to have something happen with Darkseid next issue, only for it not to happen. So yeah, he did establish it in issue 1. And I will say, I feel like this first shot, not the other ones, but this first shot of Darkseid that we get in this issue, probably literally straight up ripped off or close enough to when Orion walks in on Darkseid, I believe in New Gods number 2 or possibly number 3. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, this is almost literally Kirby Darkseid there. So there you go, guys. That is the end of my review for Ambush Bug issue number 1. If you're still watching and you are subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone out there, thanks again for watching and have yourselves an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.